There are many American films depicting frat culture, like the more recent GOAT, a decidedly serious look at violent male culture in colleges, and older comedies such as Animal House, or contemporary excellent foolishness like Old School. Generally, the institution of fraternities in the US has been treated as comedic fodder for stories of redemption, friendship, and raunchy humor. In reality, frat houses are akin to an episode of Law & Order Special Victims Unit, not so much a barrel of laughs featuring the likes of Will Ferrell or John Belushi. Pledge offers a hyper-realistic vision of the frat world that's simultaneously outrageously exaggerated and also true to the nature of these violent male-dominated institutions. The screenplay digs into the hideous truths of fraternities, exploring violence, classism, and the dangers of white men who cling to primitive ways of life as a method of preserving a mythical sense of culture that's only ever existed in their minds, not in reality. Throughout the course of the film, there are moments of dark comedy, though the bulk of the story and plot remain fixed on the serious, the macabre, and, of course, the brutal. There's no shortage of nastiness. The theme is what's most important in Pledge. Capitalist imagery is used throughout the film in order to parallel frat culture's devious inner workings to those of capitalism, showing similarity between these two cruel systems of exploitation.
Party time! Accident!
Anyone honest knows that a fraternity isn't about brotherhood, so much as it's about pack mentality, dangerous loyalties, and predatory behavior in pursuit of immoral hedonism. The only connections being built to last are those tied to capitalism, between young dudes who need other young dudes to serve as potential alibis, business contacts, and get-out-of-jail-free cards later in life. As it stands, fraternities exist as a damaging, destructive force that turns little monsters into bigger ones, as well as transforms young men who might have otherwise been sensible grown men into bourgeois terrors. The social function of the frat is akin to capitalism, only further driven by toxic masculine ideals. Frat culture convinces young men to just take it and everything will work out. The reward is, to them, worth any pain. A frat, like a capitalist economy, encourages young guys to foster an environment of harmful competition, masquerading as a system open to all when it's actually a very rigid class system unto itself. There's an excellent use of branding in Pledge that ties hazing to commodification. In capitalism, many things are turned into commodities, or most things these days. The body has been commodified in a variety of ways, including manual labor like trades workers and also the labor of sex workers, among many other examples. When the Cryptea Frat brands its pledges, this is another piece of capitalist imagery that reduces the male body to beef and turns young men into nothing more than commodities to be consumed for bourgeois purposes. One of the final pledges left standing in the end, Justin, is another example of parallels between frats and capitalist industry. He survives the vicious hazing, only to get indoctrinated into the ruling class. Instead of capital and/or money, social mobility in fraternities is gauged in violence. To preserve himself, Justin must become one of the upper class, similar to capitalism forcing the exploited into becoming the exploiters. Fraternities transform prey into predators, turning sheep into wolves on a mass scale of production. Power and control in the bourgeois bring out the medieval in man, like the days of feudalism have returned with all its inequality and torture. The frat, called the Cryptea, or just Cryptea, is actually modeled off an ancient institution of the same name dating back to ancient Sparta. Crypteia comes from the Greek kryptos, meaning hidden, secret things. The institution's considered by contemporary scholars as a secret police created by Sparta's ruling class to terrorize the lower class, preventing threats of rebellion. Ultimately, the Frat institution as a whole, like the Crypteia, is one that privileges the bourgeois and its traditions at the expense of all else: women, the poor, people of color, and so on. When people of color talk of celebrating their culture, they're not holding up institutions or traditions of violence. It's their language, religion, and customs they wish to retain. White men whining about white culture are concerned with traditions like the Crypteia. An uncomfortable scene in Pledge involves Ethan, the only black pledge, being forcibly branded. This takes us back to gruesome traditions in white American culture during slavery, when black people were branded on the shoulders, cheeks, or buttocks as a form of corporal punishment, permanently marking a slave's body with the brand of their owner. There's Irish culture, Norwegian culture, and so on, but there's no such thing as white culture, and those who refer to it are often, if not always, codifying racism. Ethan's branding moment calls America's dark racial history out of the shadows to give appropriate context to the traditions of violence being upheld by the fictional Crypteia, as well as the same traditions that are attempting to be upheld by neo-Nazis and other white supremacists to this day. Crypteia stands in as a symbol of all the destructive institutional values continually perpetuated throughout the Western world.
Oh, I bet you're eating a lot of God and wood, huh?
Fraternities manufacture monstrosity in young men because, at their core, they're factories of dehumanization. They teach young men not only how to dehumanize another person, but also how to use that dehumanized individual to their advantage and switch off their own humanity whenever necessary. Frats don't operate on brotherhood. They operate on blackmail, coercion, manipulation, and, most importantly, violence. They're a breeding ground for the young bourgeois, who go on to manipulate anybody beneath them through any and all forms of institutional, physical, and psychological violence. Daniel Robbins gave us one of the low-key smartest horrors in 2019 because he refused to tone anything down in Pledge. This could easily have been a simple reductive slice of torture porn, going for the lowest common denominator. Instead, it's a gruesome evisceration of white American values. The screenplay resonates deeply in a day and age when right-wing maniacs spiral deeper and deeper into racism every week, rallying around a mythical USA that never truly existed outside the patriotic conservative hive mind. The idea of social horror isn't new, in spite of non-horror critics who acted like Jordan Peele's amazing debut Get Out was the first. It's a subgenre of horror that's been around a long time, going back to Wes Craven, Roberta Findlay, George A. Romero, and even further back to directors like Fritz Lang and F.W. Murnau. Pledge never strays into preachy territory, and like the best of these kinds of social horror stories, serves a definitively socio-political purpose, and the film's gruesome horror lets all that purpose shine with terrifying glory.